So I'm going to put it on speaker view, if I can find it. So we see Anne when she starts talking. Here they come now. Denise is here. So just let me put you on speaker. Here's Denise. Okay, Anne, so over to you. When you start talking, we'll see you instead of me.
All right.
There we go.
This is, yes, wonderful. So lovely to be here with Janet and Tribe Sober, a group that I am completely devoted to. I'm a big fan of Janet's. I'm a big fan of Tribe Sober. And it's so nice to see you, Julia, and to see that you've been successful and to hear your story. And so I'm in Toronto, Canada. And as Janet said, I was in South Africa in November, late November, doing my course, Writing Your Recovery, in person for 5 days with 25 women. But let me give you a little background. My name is Dowsett Johnston, as you can see on the screen. For 30 years, I was a journalist at Canada's national news magazine, and I had a very significant relationship with alcohol near the end. I hit menopause. I um, I worked very hard. I won a lot of awards. I was very well known across the country as a journalist. And Maclean's, of course, was our Time or Newsweek. So I had a very prominent position. And from that position, I went to become vice principal of McGill University in Montreal, a city where I knew no one, a job that was completely different from anything I'd ever done. And I was 52 years old. My son had gone off to university. I was an empty nester. In other words, I was all by myself in a city. I didn't speak French. Everybody spoke French. And I was as lonely as it gets. And I had a very huge job at arguably Canada's most international university. McGill is known around the world. And it didn't go well. It didn't go well. I had already become acclimatized to a sense that alcohol was glamorous. Alcohol was how I decompressed. I was a workaholic, had been for ages, and now very quickly my drinking ramped up. I was working around the clock and I was using alcohol. What distinguishes Montreal is alcohol is sold in all the grocery stores, corner stores, and I would get till about 11 o'clock at night and think I'll keep working, and the store would be closing, and at 5 to 11 I'd run in and get a bottle of wine. I'd work till 1 or 2 in the morning, then I'd get up with a hangover, and this did not go well. My drinking ramped up very quickly. I had a mother who was cross addicted to Valium and alcohol from an early age, very much of her generation, the 1960s. And I consoled myself that, unlike my mother, I always went to work. I didn't miss work. I won awards at work. I was highly successful. I couldn't be an alcoholic. And of course, I was. And so on June the 7th, 2007, or June the 15th, doesn't matter, Father's Day, my favorite cousin was killed by a drunk driver. And he was the father of four little kids, the youngest of which was in the front seat. She became brain damaged. And that was a pivotal moment for me. I sat on the floor of my condo and said, I lost my childhood to alcohol, I lost Dougie to alcohol, and now I'm losing myself to alcohol. And I began to go to 12-step meetings, and my alcoholism dug in. It took me a year and a half to quit drinking. Had so many day ones, went to rehab, so many day ones after rehab. Um, but in November of 2008, I got on the floor. I prayed to God. I said, I'm going to die. And I went to one last meeting thinking I'll give it one last try. And a woman crossed the floor and said, can I take you for coffee? Can I take you to a meeting tonight? Can I take you to another meeting tomorrow night? Only one rule, you have to send me a gratitude list every morning. And that was 17 years ago. I haven't had a drink since. And I haven't skipped my gratitude list with her, maybe 2 days over the 17 years. So I see it as a pivotal part of my staying sober. So, I have a saying, which is put down the glass, and the universe has a larger imagination than you do. I had always wanted to be a writer. I had been an editor and written a bit, but not a lot. I then sat down and sold the idea to Canada's largest newspaper that I write a series on women and alcohol, and it was $100,000 year-long project where I would travel the world and look at how alcohol was viewed in many countries. I won that award. Out of that award, in that 14-part series, I produced my book, Drink, The Intimate Relationship Between Women and Alcohol, which was named one of the top 10 books of the year by the Washington Post. And I exposed the pinking of the alcohol market, meaning that I was the poster girl of risky drinking. Men were always drinking more than women, but women were catching up. And why? Because the alcohol industry had taken aim at our gender by developing products like those little pre-mixed drinks for teenage girls, what I call chick beer, or skinny girl vodka, or pink vodka, none of which is a manly drink. So I broke that story internationally and launched myself as a very successful writer. And from there, I got so many notes on a daily basis from women saying, will you help me? Will you help me? Will you help me stop drinking? That I indeed went back to school in my 60s and became a psychotherapist. And as a psychotherapist, deal with a lot of women with drinking issues. And I have a thriving psychotherapy practice, but I deeply miss writing. So I invented my course called Writing Your Recovery, which is for women only. I'm sorry, Seaview, for women only. And I offer it online, but it's not taped. It's me online. And it's a wonderful 8-week course, 2 hours each, where I teach you everything you need to know about writing, from getting started, facing down the fear, right to how do you get published. All the things that I needed to know, wanted to know when I published my own book. And I really encourage any of you who are interested to have a look at my website under workshops, because it launches on January the 21st, and there's still room in lots of room in both the morning or midday offering and the evening offering. Most people, might not find the evening offering, maybe Val, but to their liking in terms of schedule. But there are the two offerings on January the 21st, and we have great community, and lots of friendships are formed and projects are launched, and it's wonderful. But I'm very interested in the politics of what Janet is doing, what I'm doing in terms of, recovering out loud, I guess is how I would put it, in terms of facing the alcohol market, facing the fact that women now are catching up to men in a remarkable way, and in teenage years, outpacing for the first time, outpacing young men in terms of their interest in drinking. So we're seeing a revolution, and a revolution in those of us who push back, revolution in the non-alcoholic drink market, revolution in offerings such as Janet's Tribe Sober, which when I got sober, it was just 12-step offerings. We didn't have this wonderful option. So there I am, Janet, the beginning.
Oh, thank you, Anne. I wanted to ask you to share one kind of writing tip that, as you might remember, I was very taken with because I saw it on an Instagram story the other day, I think. It was about the quilt squares. Because if there's anyone
Right.
here like me that felt overwhelmed by writing a book, I mean, I just imagined you sat down and started at the beginning and had to keep going till you got to the end. But then Anne shared her quilt square tip with us, and it completely changed the way that I thought. So just tell them about that, Anne, before we let you off the hook.
Yeah, quilt squares, it's a way that in my 30 years of teaching writing, helping professional writers get better, people would say, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to begin. I don't know where to begin. And I would say, write me a 750 word, which is very short, quilt square. In other words, a scene you care about, a scene you can imagine or remember. And you write that from beginning to end. So let's take a scene with my son when he says, you've gained so much by quitting drinking. I argue I haven't. He says, yes, get a piece of paper, write a line down the middle, and that's a scene. And what it does is I can place it in the patchwork quilt of my book. If you take a look at a copy of my book, it is a series of quilt squares, a series of scenes, and ultimately a series of quilt squares makes an essay or a chapter, and a series of chapters makes a book. So I help you take your perhaps fear of taking on a big project like a book or an essay, and I break it down, help you break it down into the things you remember. You might remember, when I first had to quit drinking, this happened to me. Or let's take Julia's beautiful story of it was Christmas, and my son showed up with his pregnant wife. That's a scene. And if you can break your life into scenes, or your story, your book into scenes, it's easy to put something together. And it's my job as a teacher to help you make that manageable, make the dream come true.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Yeah, I must tell you that I've read Drink for the third time, specifically looking for your quilt squares and line breaks, and it's been like a revelation. It's been so interesting. So I'm going to stop the